The autumn sun dipped low over the rolling hills of Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban streets. It was a picturesque town where neighbors waved hello and children played in cul-de-sacs until dusk. But beneath its idyllic surface lay secrets that no one dared to speak aloud. Secrets like the one buried in the heart of Emily Harper. Emily, a vibrant 29-year-old graphic designer, had always been the life of every gathering. Her laughter filled rooms, her kindness drew people in, and her unwavering loyalty made her everyone's go-to confidant. For years, she believed she had found her perfect counterpart in Rachel Meyer, her best friend since college. They shared everything, or so Emily thought. Their friendship began during their freshman year at the University of Michigan, where they bonded over late-night coffee runs and endless discussions about art, dreams, and life. Rachel was the yin to Emily's yang, reserved where Emily was outgoing, meticulous where Emily was spontaneous. Yet despite their differences, they complemented each other beautifully, or so it seemed. As the years passed, their bond only grew stronger, or so Emily believed. Rachel became her emergency contact, her plus one at weddings, and the person she turned to when life felt overwhelming. To Emily, Rachel wasn't just a friend, she was family. But friendships, like any relationship, can be deceptively fragile. And Emily would soon learn just how thin the line between trust and betrayal could be. It all started with small things, things Emily dismissed as trivial at first. A missed phone call here, an unexplained absence there. Then came the passive-aggressive comments disguised as jokes. "You're always the center of attention, aren't you?" Rachel would say with a smirk, brushing it off when Emily questioned her tone. At work, Emily noticed subtle changes too. Files went missing from her desk, projects were delayed without explanation, and clients who once praised her suddenly seemed dissatisfied. She chalked it up to stress or bad luck, never imagining someone close to her might be orchestrating these setbacks. One evening, as Emily sat on her couch scrolling through social media, she stumbled upon something that sent a chill down her spine. A photo of Rachel at a networking event, smiling brightly alongside Emily's biggest client, the same client who had recently pulled out of a major project with her. The caption read, "Thrilled to connect with such talented professionals tonight." Emily stared at the screen, her mind racing. Why hadn't Rachel mentioned attending the event? And why was she cozying up to someone crucial to Emily's career? She decided to confront Rachel the next day, but when she called, Rachel's phone went straight to voicemail. Texts went unanswered, and by the time Emily arrived at Rachel's apartment, she was told Rachel had left town for the weekend. Something didn't add up. That night, unable to sleep, Emily began digging deeper. She scrolled through old emails, searching for anything unusual. What she found shocked her. Emails between Rachel and several of her clients revealed conversations that should have come from Emily herself. Rachel had been impersonating her, undermining her professionally while pretending to support her personally. Betrayal burned in Emily's chest, but before she could decide what to do next, tragedy struck. 2 days later, Emily's body was discovered in the woods near Willow Creek Park. She had been strangled, her lifeless form left among the fallen leaves. The news sent shockwaves through the community, leaving friends and colleagues reeling. How could someone harm someone as kind and beloved as Emily? Detective James Carter, a seasoned investigator known for his sharp instincts and relentless pursuit of justice, was assigned to the case. As he stood over Emily's body, his eyes scanned the scene methodically. There were no signs of struggle nearby, suggesting she knew her attacker or trusted them enough not to fight back. James began his investigation by retracing Emily's final days. Friends described her as anxious and distracted, though none knew why. Colleagues reported tension at work, citing missed deadlines and strained client relationships. Neighbors recalled seeing Rachel visit Emily frequently in the weeks leading up to her death. When James interviewed Rachel, she appeared distraught, tears streaming down her face as she recounted their friendship. "I don't understand," she sobbed. "Who would do this to her?" But James wasn't convinced. Beneath Rachel's grief, he sensed something off, a flicker of unease that hinted at a darker truth. His instincts told him to dig deeper, to peel back the layers of deception that surrounded Emily's life. What James uncovered next would unravel a web of jealousy, manipulation, and betrayal hidden behind the facade of a supposedly unbreakable friendship. The illusion of trust had masked a sinister reality, and now it was up to James to expose the truth. The morning after Emily Harper's body was discovered, Detective James Carter arrived at the crime scene with a sense of urgency that bordered on obsession. Willow Creek Park, usually bustling with joggers and dog walkers, was eerily quiet, cordoned off by yellow police tape. The crisp autumn air carried the faint scent of pine, but it did little to mask the heaviness that hung over the area. As James surveyed the scene, his sharp eyes caught details others might overlook. A snapped twig here, a scuffed patch of dirt there. Emily's body had been found partially concealed beneath a pile of leaves, her hands clenched into fists as if she'd fought back in her final moments. But the lack of defensive wounds suggested otherwise. Whoever killed her had approached her with enough familiarity to lower her guard. That fact alone gnawed at James. People didn't let strangers get close enough to strangle them, not unless they were incapacitated or completely unsuspecting. James's first task was to review the forensic report compiled by Dr. Laura Bennett, the medical examiner. According to her findings, Emily had died from manual strangulation, likely inflicted by someone with significant strength. There were no signs of sexual assault or robbery, which ruled out random violence or opportunistic crime. This was personal, deeply personal. She struggled briefly, Dr. Bennett explained, pointing to minor bruising on Emily's wrists, but not for long. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. James nodded thoughtfully, jotting down notes. Any DNA evidence? Not much, Dr. Bennett admitted. We found traces of skin under her nails, but it'll take time to analyze. Also, fibers consistent with a wool scarf were embedded in the ligature marks around her neck. It's possible the killer used it to subdue her. A scarf. James filed that detail away, knowing it could be crucial later. He thanked Dr. Bennett and turned his attention to Emily's phone records and social media activity. Technology often revealed truths people tried to hide. What he uncovered painted a troubling picture. In the weeks leading up to her death, Emily had exchanged numerous texts and emails with Rachel Meyer, the same Rachel who claimed to be devastated by her best friend's murder. At first glance, their conversations seemed normal. Casual check-ins, plans for coffee, shared memes. But buried within those exchanges were hints of tension. One text stood out in particular. "You've been acting weird lately. What's going on?" Emily had sent it 3 days before her death. Rachel's response was vague. "Just stressed about work. You know how it is." Work. That word kept popping up, both in interviews and in Emily's digital footprint. Several colleagues mentioned that Emily had been struggling professionally, citing missed deadlines and strained client relationships. When James dug deeper, he discovered something alarming. Rachel Meyer had been communicating directly with several of Emily's key clients, posing as Emily herself. "This doesn't make sense," James muttered to himself as he reviewed the email threads. Why would Rachel sabotage Emily's career? They were supposed to be best friends. To answer that question, James needed to understand the dynamics of their relationship. He began by interviewing mutual acquaintances, starting with Mia Chen, a close co-worker of Emily's. Mia described Emily as hardworking and creative, qualities that made her stand out in the competitive world of graphic design. "She was killing it," Mia said, shaking her head. "Until recently anyway. Suddenly projects started falling apart and clients stopped responding. She thought it was bad luck, but I don't know. Something felt off." "Did she mention anything specific?" James asked. Mia hesitated before answering. "She said Rachel had been acting strange, like overly involved in her life. At first she thought it was just Rachel being supportive, but then she started noticing little things, emails disappearing, calls going unanswered. She even joked once that Rachel was trying to steal her identity." James's pulse quickened. Identity theft. That opened up new avenues of inquiry. He requested subpoenas for Rachel's financial records and phone data, hoping to find connections between her actions and Emily's professional setbacks. Meanwhile, James revisited Rachel's alibi for the night of Emily's murder. She claimed to have spent the evening at home, watching TV and ordering takeout. Delivery receipts confirmed the food order, But James noticed something odd. Rachel's car, a sleek black sedan, had fresh mud caked along the wheel wells, despite the dry weather that week. Where had she driven to? Back at the precinct, James cross-referenced Rachel's movements with traffic camera footage near Willow Creek Park. Sure enough, her car appeared on multiple cameras heading toward the park around the estimated time of Emily's death. While circumstantial, the evidence was enough to warrant a closer look. James also examined Emily's apartment, searching for anything that might shed light on her state of mind in her final days. What he found was chilling: a journal tucked inside a drawer, its pages filled with frantic scribbles documenting Emily's growing suspicions about Rachel. "I can't believe I'm writing this, but I think Rachel's been sabotaging me," one entry read. "She acts like she cares, but everything she does seems calculated. Is she jealous? Or is there something else?" Another entry revealed Emily's plan to confront Rachel. "Tomorrow I'll ask her straight up. If she lies, I'll know for sure." James felt a pang of sadness as he closed the journal. Emily had trusted Rachel implicitly, only to discover betrayal lurking beneath the surface. Her decision to confront Rachel may have sealed her fate. As James pieced together the timeline of events, a grim narrative began to emerge. Rachel, consumed by envy and resentment, had systematically undermined Emily's career while maintaining the facade of friendship. When Emily uncovered the truth, Rachel panicked and silenced her permanently. But proving it would require more than circumstantial evidence. James needed irrefutable proof that tied Rachel to Emily's murder, and he wouldn't stop until he found it. Detective James Carter sat in his dimly lit office, the hum of the precinct fading into the background as he sifted through the mounting evidence against Rachel Meyer. Each piece of information added another layer to the tangled web she had woven around Emily Harper's life. A web of manipulation, deceit, and ultimately murder. But unraveling it would take more than intuition. James needed hard facts to build an airtight case. His first step was to delve deeper into Rachel's financial records. At first glance, her accounts appeared ordinary. Regular paychecks from her job as a marketing consultant, utility bills, and occasional splurges on luxury items like designer handbags and spa treatments. But buried within the transactions were anomalies that caught James's attention. Over the past 6 months, Rachel had made several large cash withdrawals, totaling nearly $20,000. When questioned, she claimed the money was for personal expenses, but offered no further explanation. James wasn't buying it. Large sums of unaccounted for cash often pointed to illicit activities or attempts to cover them up. He subpoenaed security footage from nearby banks where the withdrawals had been made, hoping to catch Rachel in the act. What he found was unsettling. On multiple occasions, Rachel had visited ATMs late at night, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses despite the warm weather. Her behavior suggested she didn't want to be recognized, raising suspicions that the cash might have been used to fund something sinister. Meanwhile, forensic analysis of the fibers found on Emily's neck yielded promising results. The wool matched a scarf Rachel owned, a black and white plaid wrap Emily herself had gifted her 2 Christmases ago. When confronted with this discovery, Rachel feigned shock. "That scarf? I lost it months ago," she insisted. "I have no idea how it ended up near Emily." James noted her reaction carefully. While she seemed genuinely surprised, there was a flicker of hesitation in her eyes, a split-second delay before responding. It wasn't enough to prove guilt, but it reinforced his belief that Rachel was hiding something. To corroborate the scarf's connection to the crime, James examined photos from Emily's social media profiles. In one picture taken just weeks before her death, Rachel could be seen wearing the exact scarf draped loosely around her neck. The timestamp confirmed it was still in her possession at the time of the murder. Combined with the forensic evidence, this placed Rachel squarely in the spotlight, but James knew physical evidence alone wouldn't suffice. Motive was equally critical, and Rachel's motives were becoming increasingly clear. Interviews with mutual acquaintances revealed a pattern of jealousy and competition between the two women. Friends described Rachel as fiercely ambitious, often comparing her own achievements to Emily's. "She always wanted what Emily had," one coworker admitted reluctantly. Whether it was talent, success, or attention, Rachel couldn't stand being second best. This insight aligned with James's theory. Rachel's sabotage of Emily's career wasn't random. It was calculated. By undermining Emily professionally, Rachel sought to elevate herself, stealing clients and opportunities while maintaining the illusion of friendship. But when Emily discovered the truth, Rachel's carefully constructed facade crumbled, leaving her with only one option: silence her forever. To solidify this narrative, James turned his focus to Emily's journal. Its pages contained not only accusations against Rachel, but also clues about their final confrontation. One entry stood out. Rachel agreed to meet me tonight at the park. She sounded nervous on the phone, like she knew I'd figured everything out. I'm scared, but I need answers. If she thinks she can destroy my life and walk away, she's wrong. The mention of the park sent a chill down James's spine. It wasn't just any location. It was the site of Emily's murder. Had Rachel lured her there under false pretenses, knowing full well what she intended to do? To confirm this theory, James revisited the crime scene, combing the area for overlooked details. Near the edge of the woods, he found faint tire tracks matching Rachel's sedan. Soil samples collected from the tires would later match the dirt composition of the park, providing yet another link between Rachel and the murder. Back at the precinct, James reviewed phone records once again, focusing on calls made between Emily and Rachel in the hours leading up to the murder. The last call occurred at 7:45 p.m., lasting less than a minute. Though the content of the conversation remained unknown, its brevity suggested urgency, a final agreement to meet. With each new revelation, James grew more convinced of Rachel's guilt. Yet something still eluded him: the emotional core of the betrayal. Why had Rachel gone to such extremes? Was it pure jealousy, or did deeper insecurities drive her actions? The answer came unexpectedly during a follow-up interview with Mia Chen, Emily's coworker. Mia hesitated before speaking, clearly torn between loyalty and honesty. "There's something you should know," she finally said. "Rachel, she wasn't just jealous of Emily's success, she was obsessed with her, like to the point where it was unhealthy. She used to talk about Emily all the time, even when Emily wasn't around. It was weird." Obsession, the word resonated deeply with James. Obsessive behavior often stemmed from unresolved feelings of inadequacy or rejection. For Rachel, Emily may have represented everything she desired but couldn't achieve on her own. Their friendship wasn't built on mutual respect. It was a parasitic relationship, with Rachel feeding off Emily's accomplishments while secretly resenting her. Armed with this insight, James prepared to bring Rachel in for formal questioning. He knew she wouldn't confess easily. People like Rachel thrived on control, even in the face of overwhelming evidence. But James had spent years honing his interrogation skills, and he was ready to dismantle her defenses one lie at a time. As he gathered his files and headed toward the interview room, James allowed himself a moment of reflection. Cases like this reminded him why he became a detective, not just to solve crimes, but to give voices to those who could no longer speak for themselves. Emily Harper deserved justice, and James vowed to deliver it. The interrogation room at the precinct was stark and utilitarian, its cold metal table and fluorescent lights designed to unnerve even the most composed individuals. Rachel Meyer sat across from Detective James Carter, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her face a mask of indignation. She had agreed to come in voluntarily, likely believing she could talk her way out of suspicion. But James knew better. He had spent decades observing people under pressure, and Rachel's forced calm betrayed an underlying current of anxiety. "Let's start with the basics," James began, his tone measured but firm. "Where were you on the night Emily Harper died?" Rachel didn't hesitate. "At home," she replied smoothly. "I ordered Chinese food around 8 p.m. and watched TV until midnight. You can check my delivery receipt if you don't believe me." James nodded, pretending to make a note. "We did verify your order, but what about before that? Between 7 and 8 p.m., for example?" Rachel frowned slightly as though annoyed by the question. "I was getting ready to relax. Nothing exciting." "Why does it matter?" "It matters because we have surveillance footage placing your car near Willow Creek Park around that time," James countered. "Care to explain why you were there?" Rachel's composure faltered for a split second, her eyes darting toward the two-way mirror behind James. I I must have taken a wrong turn, she stammered. I wasn't paying attention. It's not illegal to drive through a park, is it? James leaned forward, his gaze piercing. No, it's not, but it is suspicious when tire tracks matching your car are found near the scene of a murder, especially when fibers from a scarf you own were found on the victim's neck. Rachel's face flushed red, and she shifted uncomfortably in her seat. That's ridiculous. I told you. I lost that scarf months ago. Someone must have stolen it. Stolen it? James raised an eyebrow. From where? Your closet. Because we searched your apartment, Rachel, and guess what we found? Photos of you wearing that same scarf just weeks ago. Care to revise your story? Rachel clenched her jaw, clearly struggling to maintain her composure. Fine, she snapped. Maybe I forgot I still had it. That doesn't mean I killed Emily. No, it doesn't, James conceded. But it raises questions. Like why you lied about losing it in the first place. Or why you've been impersonating Emily in emails to her clients. Rachel froze, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. What are you talking about? She demanded, though her voice lacked conviction. James slid printouts of the incriminating emails across the table. These messages came directly from your account, Rachel. You posed as Emily, sabotaging her projects and stealing her clients. Why? Jealousy? Resentment? Rachel stared at the documents, her hands trembling as she flipped through them. For a moment, she looked genuinely distraught, but whether it was guilt or fear of being caught, James couldn't tell. Finally, she sighed heavily and slumped back in her chair. Okay, fine, she admitted reluctantly. I may have contacted some of her clients, but I didn't mean for it to go this far. I wanted to prove I was better than her. Is that so wrong? James studied her carefully, noting the shift in her tone. Gone was the confident facade. Now she sounded defensive, almost childlike. Better than her how? He pressed. Emily was successful, talented, well-liked. What made you feel inferior? Rachel hesitated, her eyes filling with tears. You wouldn't understand, she muttered bitterly. Everyone always loved Emily. She got everything handed to her. Her looks, her career, her charm. And me? I worked twice as hard and got half the recognition. No matter what I did, I could never measure up. So you decided to tear her down instead, James concluded. Sabotage her career, ruin her reputation. Was that supposed to make you feel better? It was supposed to level the playing field. Rachel shot back, her voice rising. She didn't deserve all the attention, all the praise. Not when I was the one putting in the effort. James let her rant, allowing her emotions to spill out unchecked. People often revealed more than they intended when they felt cornered, and Rachel was no exception. When she finally stopped, breathless and teary-eyed, James seized the opportunity. And then Emily figured it out, he said softly. She confronted you, didn't she? That's why you met her at the park. Rachel stiffened, her earlier bravado crumbling completely. She didn't give me a choice, she whispered, her voice barely audible. She threatened to expose me, to ruin me the way I ruined her. I panicked. I didn't mean to hurt her. James leaned closer, his expression hardening. But you did hurt her, Rachel. You strangled her with that scarf and left, her body in the woods. Did you think no one would find her? Or that no one would connect the dots back to you? Rachel buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't plan it, she choked out. It just happened. One minute we were arguing, and the next, I don't know what came over me. I swear I never meant to kill her. Though Rachel's confession provided clarity, James remained cautious. Her emotional breakdown suggested genuine remorse, but it also highlighted the depth of her obsession with Emily. To fully understand the dynamics of their toxic relationship, James turned his attention to Emily's journal once again. Rereading its entries, he noticed recurring themes of manipulation and control. Rachel hadn't just envied Emily, she had systematically inserted herself into every aspect of Emily's life, from her personal decisions to her professional endeavors. Their friendship, once rooted in mutual admiration, had devolved into a parasitic cycle of dependency and resentment. One passage stood out in particular. Sometimes I wonder if Rachel really cares about me, or if she just likes the idea of having someone to mold into her image. She acts like she knows what's best for me, but lately I feel like I'm losing myself. The words struck a chord with James. Rachel's actions weren't driven solely by jealousy. They stemmed from a desperate need for validation, a desire to live vicariously through Emily's success. When Emily threatened to break free of her influence, Rachel saw it as a betrayal and reacted violently. To further corroborate Rachel's involvement, James revisited Emily's phone records, focusing on texts exchanged in the days leading up to her death. One message from Rachel stood out. "We need to talk. Meet me at the park tonight. Don't tell anyone." The ominous tone suggested premeditation, undermining Rachel's claim that the murder was accidental. Combined with the forensic evidence linking her to the crime scene, it painted a damning picture of calculated intent. As James prepared to present his findings to the district attorney, he reflected on the complexity of human relationships. Friendships, like any bond, required trust and reciprocity. In Emily and Rachel's case, those foundations had been eroded by envy and insecurity, leaving behind a hollow shell of betrayal. What began as admiration had spiraled into obsession and ultimately tragedy. Outside the precinct, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Willow Creek. Somewhere in the distance, leaves rustled in the autumn breeze, carrying whispers of secrets laid bare. Justice would soon be served, but for James, the weight of the case lingered, a reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of its loss. The rain fell steadily outside the precinct, a somber backdrop to the storm brewing inside Detective James Carter's mind. Rachel Meyer's confession had provided clarity, but it also raised new questions about accountability and justice. Her words, "I didn't plan it, it just happened," rang hollow in James's ears. Crimes of passion were rarely as spontaneous as perpetrators claimed. They were often the culmination of simmering resentment and calculated manipulation. In Rachel's case, her actions spoke louder than her excuses. As James reviewed the evidence one final time, he couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow for Emily Harper. She had trusted Rachel implicitly, only to discover betrayal lurking beneath years of friendship. Her decision to confront Rachel may have been an attempt to reclaim control over her life, but instead it cost her everything. For James, solving the case wasn't just about closing a file. It was about giving Emily's voice back, ensuring her story wouldn't be overshadowed by Rachel's lies. James knew that securing a conviction would require more than Rachel's emotional breakdown during questioning. Prosecutors needed concrete proof tying her to the murder beyond a reasonable doubt. He began by compiling every piece of evidence into a comprehensive timeline. Financial records. Large cash withdrawals from Rachel's accounts suggested she had prepared for contingencies, possibly bribing witnesses or covering her tracks. Phone records. Texts between Rachel and Emily revealed escalating tension, culminating in Rachel's ominous message instructing Emily to meet her at the park alone. Forensic evidence. Fibers from Rachel's scarf found on Emily's neck, combined with tire tracks matching her car near the crime scene, placed her directly at the location of the murder. Digital footprint. Emails impersonating Emily demonstrated Rachel's deliberate efforts to sabotage her career, establishing motive and premeditation. Physical evidence. Soil samples from Rachel's tires matched the dirt composition of Willow Creek Park, further corroborating her presence there. Witness testimony. Friends and colleagues described Rachel's obsessive behavior toward Emily, painting a picture of jealousy and insecurity that spiraled out of control. With this arsenal of evidence, James presented his findings to the district attorney, confident they could build a strong case against Rachel. But as he walked through the courthouse doors the following morning, he couldn't shake the feeling that something still felt unresolved. Not legally, but emotionally. Rachel's legal team wasted no time mounting their defense strategy. They argued that the murder was accidental, a tragic escalation of a heated argument rather than a premeditated act. To support this claim, they emphasized Rachel's lack of prior criminal history and her immediate cooperation with investigators after her arrest. During pretrial hearings, Rachel took the stand in her own defense. Dressed in a modest black dress, her hair pulled back neatly, she appeared contrite and vulnerable, a stark contrast to the manipulative persona James had uncovered. Her testimony painted herself as a victim of circumstance, someone who had acted impulsively in a moment of panic. "I loved Emily," Rachel said softly, tears streaming down her face. "She was my best friend. I never wanted to hurt her. When we met that night, I thought we could fix things. Together. But when she started yelling, accusing me of ruining her life, I lost control. I swear, I didn't mean to kill her." Her performance was convincing, eliciting murmurs of sympathy from some members of the jury, but James remained unmoved. Love and obsession were two sides of the same coin, and Rachel's actions betrayed a pattern of calculated manipulation that extended far beyond a single argument. To counteract Rachel's narrative, James worked closely with prosecutors to highlight inconsistencies in her story. For example, while Rachel claimed the murder was unplanned, surveillance footage showed her parking her car several blocks away from the park, a deliberate attempt to avoid detection. Similarly, her use of the scarf to strangle Emily suggested forethought, not impulse. Moreover, emails and journal entries detailing Rachel's systematic sabotage of Emily's career undermined her portrayal of their friendship as purely supportive. By presenting these documents alongside witness testimonies, prosecutors aimed to demonstrate that Rachel's jealousy and resentment had festered for years, culminating in a violent eruption. Throughout the trial, James made it his mission to ensure Emily's perspective was heard. He collaborated with the prosecution to introduce excerpts from her journal, allowing the jury to glimpse the emotional toll Rachel's actions had taken on her. One entry in particular resonated deeply. "I used to think Rachel cared about me, but now I see how much she resents me. Every success I have feels like a threat to her. Am I wrong to want distance? Or is she right that I'm selfish for trying to protect myself?" These words humanized Emily, reminding everyone in the courtroom that she was more than a victim of homicide. She was a woman caught in a toxic relationship, struggling to assert her independence despite overwhelming pressure to conform. Friends and colleagues also testified about Emily's kindness, creativity, and determination. Their stories painted a vivid portrait of a vibrant individual whose potential had been tragically cut short. As Mia Chen recounted how Emily had mentored junior designers without hesitation, even as her own career faltered, James noticed several jurors wiping away tears. After days of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict, guilty of second-degree murder. While the charge acknowledged Rachel's lack of premeditation, it reflected the severity of her actions and the malice behind them. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison without parole, citing the devastating impact her crime had on Emily's family, friends, and community. For James, the outcome brought a measure of closure, but not satisfaction. Justice had been served, yet it couldn't undo the damage Rachel had inflicted. Emily's absence left a void that no verdict could fill. In the weeks following the trial, James visited Emily's parents to deliver the news personally. Sitting across from them in their cozy living room, surrounded by photos of Emily smiling brightly, he felt the weight of his responsibility anew. "Your daughter was remarkable," he told them gently, "and she deserved better. I hope knowing the truth brings you some peace." Her mother nodded, clutching a tissue tightly. "Thank you, Detective, for finding out what really happened, and for making sure Rachel can't hurt anyone else." As James drove home that evening, he reflected on the fragility of trust and the lengths people went to maintain illusions of connection. Cases like Emily's reminded him why he became a detective, not just to solve crimes, but to honor the lives lost and give voice to those who could no longer speak for themselves. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the fading light. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sang softly, breaking the silence. Life moved forward, carrying both grief and resilience. And though Emily Harper was gone, her story endured, a testament to the power of truth and the enduring fight for justice. The verdict had been delivered, and Rachel Meyer was now behind bars, her fate sealed by a jury that saw through her carefully constructed facade. But for Detective James Carter, the case was far from closed in his mind. Justice had been served, yes, but the scars left by Emily Harper's murder ran deep, affecting not only her family and friends, but also the broader community of Willow Creek. To truly honor Emily's memory, James knew he had to explore the ripple effects of her death, uncovering lessons that could prevent similar tragedies in the future. As James reflected on the case, he realized that while Emily was the primary victim, others had suffered collateral damage from Rachel's toxic behavior. Friends like Mia Chen described feeling manipulated or used by Rachel, who often inserted herself into their lives under the guise of friendship. She'd offered to help, but it always came with strings attached, Mia explained during a follow-up interview. Looking back, I see how she thrived on control, whether it was over Emily or anyone else. Colleagues at Emily's workplace echoed similar sentiments. Several admitted they had noticed Rachel's growing interference in Emily's projects, but dismissed it as harmless meddling between friends. I thought she was just being supportive, one coworker confessed. But now I realize how much damage she caused, not just to Emily, but to our team. Projects fell apart, clients walked away. It wasn't until after Emily died that we pieced everything together. These revelations underscored a painful truth. Rachel's obsession hadn't existed in isolation. Her actions had disrupted lives, shattered trust, and created an environment where manipulation thrived unchecked. For James, this highlighted the importance of recognizing red flags early, before they escalated into something irreversible. To better understand what drove Rachel to such extremes, James consulted Dr. Evelyn Marks, a forensic psychologist specializing in criminal behavior. Together, they reviewed Rachel's history, from her childhood to her adult relationships, searching for patterns that might explain her actions. Rachel exhibits classic signs of narcissistic personality traits, Dr. Marks explained during their meeting. Her need for validation and admiration likely stemmed from feelings of inadequacy dating back to her youth. When Emily outshone her, professionally, socially, it triggered deep-seated insecurities. Instead of addressing those feelings constructively, Rachel channeled them into envy and resentment. Dr. Marks went on to describe how Rachel's obsession with Emily evolved over time. At first, she admired Emily genuinely, but as Emily's success grew, Rachel began viewing her as both a role model and a rival. This duality is common in toxic friendships. The person you admire becomes the person you resent because they represent everything you feel you lack. James nodded thoughtfully. So when Emily confronted her, it wasn't just about losing control. It was about losing the identity she'd built around Emily. Exactly, Dr. Marks agreed. For someone like Rachel, whose sense of self-worth depended entirely on external validation, Emily pulling away would have felt like an existential threat. In her mind, silencing Emily became the only way to preserve her own fragile ego. This insight helped James contextualize Rachel's actions without excusing them. Understanding her psychological motivations didn't absolve her of guilt. It simply illuminated the dangers of unchecked jealousy and insecurity. In the aftermath of the trial, James worked closely with local advocacy groups to raise awareness about toxic relationships and emotional abuse. While physical violence often dominated discussions about domestic and interpersonal harm, cases like Emily's demonstrated the devastating consequences of psychological manipulation. He partnered with organizations focused on mental health and relationship dynamics to host workshops in schools, workplaces, and community centers across Willow Creek. Topics range from identifying manipulative behaviors to fostering healthy boundaries in friendships and partnerships. During one such workshop, James shared Emily's story with her family's permission, emphasizing the importance of speaking up when something feels off. It's easy to dismiss subtle signs of toxicity as harmless quirks, James told attendees, but over time, those behaviors can erode trust and autonomy. If Emily had received support sooner, if someone had believed her suspicions about Rachel, we might be telling a different story today. Feedback from these sessions was overwhelmingly positive, with participants expressing gratitude for the opportunity to learn and engage. One woman approached James after a presentation, visibly shaken. "I've been in a friendship like that," she admitted quietly. "Hearing Emily's story made me realize I don't have to stay in it. Thank you for sharing this." Moments like these reinforced James's belief in the power of education and dialogue. Preventing future tragedies required more than solving crimes. It demanded addressing the root causes that allowed them to happen in the first place. As part of his efforts to honor Emily's memory, James collaborated with her parents to establish a scholarship fund in her name. Aimed at supporting aspiring graphic designers, the initiative sought to celebrate Emily's creativity and passion for art while inspiring others to pursue their dreams fearlessly. The launch event took place at a local gallery, featuring an exhibition of Emily's work curated by her colleagues and friends. Paintings, digital designs, and sketches adorned the walls, each piece reflecting her unique vision and talent. Visitors moved through the space in quiet awe, many leaving heartfelt notes in a guestbook dedicated to Emily's legacy. Standing near the entrance, James watched as Emily's mother addressed the crowd, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. Emily believed in kindness, creativity, and authenticity, she said. She wanted everyone to shine in their own way. This scholarship is our way of keeping her spirit alive and ensuring no one forgets the light she brought into the world. Tears welled in James's eyes as he listened. Though Emily's life had been tragically cut short, her impact endured, a testament to the resilience of hope and love even in the face of loss. That evening, as James sat alone in his office, he opened Emily's journal one final time. Its pages were worn from repeated readings, each entry offering a glimpse into her thoughts and struggles. He lingered on a passage near the end. Sometimes I wonder if people see me the way I really am, or just the version I think they want me to be. Either way, I refuse to let fear dictate my choices anymore. I deserve to live authentically, even if it means losing some people along the way. Closing the journal, James felt a profound sense of respect for Emily. She had fought to reclaim her identity, even knowing the risks involved. And though her journey ended too soon, her courage inspired those left behind to carry the torch, to speak out against injustice, to nurture healthy relationships, and to embrace authenticity in all its forms. The rain began to fall again outside, tapping gently against the window pane. James leaned back in his chair, allowing himself a rare moment of stillness. Solving cases like Emily's was never easy. It demanded long hours, emotional fortitude, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. But as he looked at the photo of Emily smiling brightly beside her favorite painting, he knew it was worth every sacrifice. Justice had been served, but Emily's story wasn't over. Through her legacy, she continued to teach lessons of strength, resilience, and the enduring power of human connection. The courtroom was silent, save for the rhythmic tapping of the judge's gavel, as Rachel Meyer stood before the bench, her head bowed in a mixture of shame and defiance. To most observers, she appeared defeated, a woman whose carefully constructed world had crumbled under the weight of her own actions. But Detective James Carter, seated in the back row, saw something else beneath her stoic exterior. A flicker of unresolved anger, a refusal to fully accept responsibility for the devastation she had caused. Rachel's sentencing marked the culmination of months of investigation, testimony, and deliberation. The jury's decision, guilty of second-degree murder, was unanimous, reflecting the overwhelming evidence presented during the trial. Yet as the judge delivered the sentence, James couldn't help but reflect on the broader implications of the case. Justice wasn't just about punishing wrongdoing, it was about healing wounds, fostering accountability, and preventing future tragedies. Rachel Meyer, the judge began, his voice steady and authoritative, you have been found guilty of taking the life of Emily Harper. Your actions were not spontaneous. They were the result of years of manipulation, jealousy, and resentment. While you may not have planned the act itself, your systematic sabotage of Emily's career and personal life demonstrates premeditated malice. Rachel shifted uncomfortably, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. For a moment, she glanced toward Emily's parents, who sat stoically in the front row, their faces etched with grief and resolve. When their eyes met hers, Rachel quickly looked away, unable to bear the weight of their pain. You will serve 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole, the judge concluded. This sentence reflects the severity of your crime and the irreversible harm you have inflicted upon Emily's family, friends, and community. As bailiffs led Rachel out of the courtroom, James noticed how small she seemed, diminished not by the handcuffs around her wrists, but by the enormity of what she had lost. Her obsession with Emily had consumed her, leaving behind a hollow shell of the person she once claimed to be. In seeking validation through destruction, Rachel had destroyed herself. For Emily's loved ones, the verdict brought a measure of closure, but not peace. Grief doesn't vanish with a court ruling. It lingers, reshaping lives in ways both visible and unseen. After the sentencing, James joined Emily's parents and a few close friends for coffee at a quiet cafe near the courthouse. The atmosphere was somber, yet tinged with gratitude. For justice served, for Emily's memory honored, and for the support they had given one another throughout the ordeal. She would have hated all this attention, Emily's father said with a bittersweet smile, gesturing toward the reporters gathered outside. She always preferred staying behind the scenes, letting her work speak for itself. Her mother nodded, clutching a photo of Emily tucked inside her purse. But maybe that's why we need to keep talking about her, she replied softly, so people remember, not just what happened to her, but who she was. She deserves that. James listened intently, moved by their determination to preserve Emily's legacy. They spoke of her kindness, her creativity, and her unwavering belief in authenticity, even when it came at a cost. These qualities defined Emily far more than the circumstances of her death ever could. To honor her memory further, James suggested organizing an annual event celebrating art and design, inspired by Emily's passion for creativity. The idea resonated deeply with her family and friends, who envisioned it as a way to inspire others to pursue their dreams fearlessly, just as Emily had done. Beyond honoring Emily's legacy, James remained committed to addressing the systemic issues highlighted by the case. Toxic relationships, whether romantic or platonic, often thrived in silence, perpetuated by societal norms that dismissed emotional manipulation as harmless drama. Breaking this cycle required education, awareness, and open dialogue, tools James believed could empower individuals to recognize and escape toxic dynamics before they escalated. In collaboration with local advocacy groups, he launched a campaign titled See It, Speak It, aimed at encouraging people to identify red flags in their relationships and seek help when needed. Posters featuring Emily's artwork adorned bus stops, libraries, and schools across Willow Creek, accompanied by messages like, "Healthy friendships are built on trust, not control. Your worth isn't defined by someone else's approval. If something feels off, trust your instincts and reach out." Workshops continued to draw large crowds, with participants sharing stories of their own experiences with manipulation and abuse. Many expressed relief at finally having a safe space to discuss these topics openly. One attendee, a young woman named Sarah, approached James after a session, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't realize how unhealthy my friendship was until tonight," she admitted. "I thought I was imagining things, that I was being too sensitive. Hearing Emily's story made me see I deserved better." Moments like these reminded James why his work mattered, not because it solved crimes, but because it sparked change. Each story shared, each life touched, represented a step toward breaking the cycle of toxicity and fostering healthier communities. As weeks turned into months, James found himself revisiting Emily's journal frequently. Its pages had become a source of reflection, reminding him of the delicate balance between justice and compassion. Solving cases like Emily's demanded not only sharp instincts and dedication, but also empathy, an ability to see beyond the surface and understand the humanity behind every action. One evening, as he packed up his office for the day, James paused to look at the photo of Emily pinned to his bulletin board. Her smile radiated warmth and strength, a stark contrast to the darkness that had surrounded her final days. He whispered a silent promise. "You won't be forgotten, Emily. Your light will guide us forward." With that, he turned off the lights and stepped into the cool night air. The streets of Willow Creek were quiet, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. Somewhere in the distance, laughter echoed from a nearby park, a reminder that life continued even in the wake of tragedy. Justice had been served, but James knew his work was far from over. Somewhere out there, another story awaited uncovering, one that demanded the same dedication and compassion he had given to Emily Harper's memory. And so, with renewed resolve, he climbed into his car and drove off into the night, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.